Started. Welcome back to the Authenticity Calling podcast. I am your host, Ralitza, and I'm so grateful to be joined today by Carla Crivaro. Welcome, Carla, to this very juicy podcast. And this is a very juicy yes. So I'm so excited to have you here. I won't spill the beans about what you do and how you do it because I would just love to hear your story first. And yeah, tease us, lead us into this beautiful podcast and our time together. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. And my invitation is for people listening is as I share my story, maybe think, oh, what is it that she does? What does she do? How is she here to support and help people in the world? Just because it's fun. So yeah, have a bit of a think, have a guess as I'm talking and figure out what it is that I do. So I am now 45 years old. I live in the northwest of England in Europe, and I have two children who live with me all the time. And I am in the process of divorce with a guy that I have an amazing relationship with. And he is in a relationship with his new partner. They live together part-time. And my ex-husband, as I call him now, we share the parenting, so we co-parent. And when he has the children, he comes back into the family home. So that means it's me, the children, and him. He has his own room. I have my own room. And then when he doesn't have the children, he goes and lives with his partner. So that's where I am at now. There might be some
I know there's going to be a lot of people like, what? You what? I thought and your partner's okay with that? I'm sure there will be reaction. And I think it's such a beautiful thing. First of all, congratulations on your divorce. I really believe in honoring people and their paths and their journeys. And I think we're meant to come together and move apart, and there are seasons, and it's a choice. There's a lot of communities and traditional spaces where there are 7-year cycles, and they honor those 7-year cycles, and you have to actually recommit yourself to your marriage because we change so much every 7 years that it is a normal practice to say, do you like the person now become do you still want to stay married to them? And that's a really normal thing. And also just normalizing healthy separations, healthy divorces, healthy ways of living with someone to minimize the impact on the children. I think that is so beautiful. So thank you for sharing that part of your journey, because it's really important, I think, to put that out there, that it's possible too.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. And so how did I get to being divorced, single, and, half the time nesting with my ex-husband? So, and it's difficult sometimes to know where to start the story. But, I was brought up Catholic, Southern Italian heritage, even though I live in the UK. And I spent a lot of my 20s sort of trying to find a husband, being very mindful of how I showed up in the world, because, how men perceived me, how they perceived my marriageability, let's say, was really important to me. And this was something that definitely was, transmitted via the church and through family and all of those things. And so that was really my focus. My worth as a woman and as a human being was being able to bag a husband and also, being able to reproduce. And so I followed that path, letting go of a career, for what I felt at the time was the man of my dreams. And so I ended up in a relationship with and getting married to a guy who ticked all the boxes that my family wanted for me. So, he was Italian and I moved to Italy and, all of these other things that were tick, 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 tick. So moving through life, doing the things that I felt that I should be doing. And I know people resonate with this in different ways. I took the job that my parents wanted me to do, or I lived in the place that my parents wanted, or I took this career on because my parents never had the opportunity for themselves and they wanted me to have it. And so, my own journey of self-abandonment, let's say, was in relationship. And so I continued on that journey. You know, we got married, we lived in Italy, then we moved to the UK for like better career possibilities for my then husband. And, you know, life was okay, let's say, you know, just coasting through. And then it was when I was pregnant with my second child, they thought that he might have Down syndrome. And the way that that news was delivered to me and everything around that, and how I was, the lack of support that I had actually created like this catalyst and like avalanche of like mental health like breakdown. And so I was very much, you know, I became increasingly anxious about health, about all of the things, about safety, and so much so that I really built up this very, very quite severe chronic anxiety with intrusive thoughts. You know, I could be sat there cutting carrots and then all of a sudden just have absolute terror wash over me as I imagine getting trapped in a lift, or, you know, getting stuck in a car or something along those lines. It was always this like feeling of being trapped, which, you know, now that I look back, it felt very, very relevant to the fact that actually I did feel trapped. You know, I had chosen a life that actually, and I had lived a life by everybody else's container. And so, you know, now that that I've taken like a step back and I'm further away from it, I can see that that feeling of being trapped was because I was trapped. I had put myself in a container.
And I'm sorry, I'm just going to take just a really quick pause here just to reflect a little bit on the way that the brain works. And that's how anxiety works, is our energy pattern, our mind, body, and spirit are all connected. And so when the energy of our choices creates a pattern, right? The mind it's a computational machine. It looks for a reason. That's our logic. That's where logic kicks in. And it's like, why do I feel this way? Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? And then that's where the spinning starts to happen. And when, you know, when you think about us being manifestors, that's where we start to create all the things that we fear. And so it's a really dangerous rabbit hole to go down. And it really does start with our self-awareness and our alignment. And exactly what you're saying is, you know, when we're out of alignment, we tend to, you know, it's a slippery slope to start to make those. And a lot of people are raised that way. And I think, especially with our generation, unconscious parenting, you know, a lot of authoritarian style parenting, a lot of churching, you know, self-rejection, because it's sinful to have a desire or a thought that's like unclean. So thank you for just taking us through that. And I think it's so important to kind of recognize that if you're anxious and you're having these thoughts, there's actually nothing wrong with you. It's just your mind, body, and spirit trying to make sense of it all. So yeah, sorry for interrupting, but I really appreciate
No, not at all. It is. It's about that. It is about coming back into alignment, because one of the things that I began to understand with my own anxiety was that I needed to speak my truth. And, you know, I needed to be able to share. So if I was worried or angry or upset about something, I just needed to be able to voice it and not have anyone shut me down or keep me quiet or try and fix it. And then, you know, because that speaking of my truth is my alignment, and also the choices that I'm making. You know, I remember going, I taught English as a second language when I lived in Italy, and I really didn't like the job, and I would have anxiety every day getting up and going and just feeling so massively overwhelmed because it wasn't in alignment with what I was doing.
That's right.
So yeah, absolutely, 100%. And so I think I got to a point where I was a stay-at-home mum. I was home educating my children. We didn't live near any family at all because his family were in Italy and my family were in a different part of the UK. This is when I was living in the south of England. And he was working quite often away for work. So I was very much off by myself with no support. And that just, you know, compounded the anxiety and the isolation that I felt. And you know, there was this opportunity to go on a retreat, and it was a woman that I had been to college with, and I thought, I need a break, I need a holiday. Like, I didn't really know what retreat it was. I just knew it was going to be in the sunshine in January, and I'm just going to go. And goodness me, the run up to that, you know, because it was going to be in Morocco, I was like, oh, do they have seatbelts in Morocco? What if happens if I lose my passport? I need to take 2 credit cards because if I lose one, I need the other. Like a proper like spiral. Do they have fire exits in the place that we're staying? You know, like I worried about all of the things.
Which are all healthy considerations. But the
Yeah.
energy with which they come is like it becomes so overwhelming. And you're also kind of describing a little bit of the symptoms of ADHD. And I talk about this in ADHD misalignment, because people with ADHD will also be hyper focused on the things that they love to do, but very distracted when we're doing things that we don't love to do. So I also want to normalize that part. Thank you for letting me jump in again.
Yay. No, thank you for like putting that in as well, because it just brings those different threads for different people. So yeah, I love it. And so I remember the day before going on the retreat, I was sat on the stairs and it was like, I can't do this anymore. Like something in my brain needs to change. My aunt had said to me, why don't you go and do some like talk therapy? And I was like, I've done all the talking. It's kept me in a loop. I'm ruminating on it. It's keeping me stuck. I need to move forward. And anyway, I go on the retreat and it just like opened up my world. Like I had the opportunity to actually be in control of my own life. Like I could determine my own destiny and I could choose how I wanted to feel. The first time I learned about boundaries was on the retreat. Like I could actually say no. Like that was a massive thing for me. Doing inner child work, forgiveness, and a lot of that forgiveness was actually for myself because I was holding on to so much guilt as a mum because of my anxiety and how that was affecting me. You know, I'd learned a little bit about attachment theory, and I was like so keen not to bring to my children like the same upbringing that I had had. Not that my parents did anything wrong as such, but they just parented unconsciously, you know, like most of our parents' generation did. And so it was a case of having all of that knowledge, but not having the actual capacity, like the nervous system regulation to be able to do the parenting that I desired. So there was a ton of guilt there. So we worked through that, let that go. And yeah, so I came back from that retreat and it just opened up this opportunity of, you know, life could feel different. And I started learning about trauma, how the nervous system works. I healed my own anxiety, understanding how it works. And then, you know, life started to feel baseline okay. And I was like, what if life could feel really good? You know, like now I know that there's a ladder that you can climb. Whoa, where can we get to on this ladder?
Good.
And you know, my relationship with my husband was like good. We had sex and it was, you know, it was okay. Like I had orgasms, didn't really have anything too problematic. But I was like, sex could be better. You know, what that looks like, I had no idea. Like I didn't know what I was looking for. I just knew like the word more was the thing that kept coming up for me. And also because I started feeling really, really, you know, so much better about myself. And I saw so many other women really struggling, particularly, you know, mothers. I was like, I really want to help them. And I don't want to do the whole talk therapy thing because that just kept me personally stuck in the past. Like I want to do something that's going to help people move forward. And, you know, somatic coaching looked like the thing. And so somebody suggested that I do the training to be a sex, love, and relationship coach. And I was like, okay, I'll learn the coaching because I can support, you know, women who are stressed out and anxious. And I'm like, I'm not going to be a sex or a relationship coach. Like, I'll take that information for myself, but I'm not going to work on that. Like, wow. I've been brought up Catholic, you know, that's not the thing. So we start the training. Like the first 4 months are a real deep dive into our own sexuality, traumas, you know, relational patterns, maladaptive coping mechanisms, the whole thing. And it was like,
Pandora's box.
Oh my God, yes. I was like, and I probably can't really talk about it if you're doing a live streaming on Facebook because they will shut it down. But like,
we can do it during the workshop. The workshop will be the perfect place to share this. This is the next piece. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like certain intimate situations that before I had felt disempowered in. Like I really began to enjoy for myself, even though it was a process of giving to another person. So people might be able to figure out what that is, if I say it cryptically. You know, and it was just this aliveness. And literally today we were having discussion in one of my, so after that training, I did another year's training in sacred sexuality for men. And our group chat that we have, you know, I was saying to them, you know, a few years ago, I would have considered myself asexual just because, you know, I didn't really desire sex. I would have it, go along with it, you know, I'd have orgasms, it'd be fine, sometimes self-pleasure, but it wasn't something that I really sought for myself. But having that awakening, just like, oh my God. And also with them, you know, the fact that we could relate differently and we didn't have to follow like society's rules, the fact that people were non-monogamous was like a whole new thing. And it was like, oh my God, I would love to try that. So I went to my then husband and suggested, you know, should we try opening up our relationship? You know, I was such a good girl in my 20s. I would like to sleep around a bit, experience, you know, a little bit of promiscuity because I never got the opportunity. And we had quite a few months of open discussion, and then we eventually decided to open up, went to like a play party together. I went to a few by myself. We dated separately, and we both had an absolutely amazing time, you know, really exploring. And the interesting thing was, I think because we had spent so many months before opening our relationship having really good conversations around what we're going to do if we get jealous, you know, what do we feel comfortable doing? Do we feel comfortable doing things together or separately? And, you know, we spent a lot of time talking. So that once we actually opened up the relationship, I mean, we hadn't covered every single topic, but we had talked so much and so openly that as the situations arise which required further communication, we were able to have that. And so we got to a point a few years ago where we had both met other people, and it hadn't been in our like plan initially when we first opened the relationship to be polyamorous. So polyamorous is like not just having sex with other people, but also having like romantic relationships with people. And we both found ourselves in separate romantic relationships. So for a period of time, we were polyamorous. And then we got to a place where we realized actually, you know, we wanted to separate, you know, how we were relating was changing, was different, you know, the sexual element, you know, even though there was a period of it being really good while we were non-monogamous, there was also an element of, okay, we're feeling that it's not really working, it's disconnected. And not because of something not working, but just because we had moved away from each other as individuals.
Or maybe you were never that close to begin with, right? Like maybe it was just circumstances that kept you together. And good for you that you were actually able to come into that relationship with openness and honesty and transparency and vulnerability. I always say that, you know, with authenticity, you cannot be authentic without being vulnerable. It's like the divine union partner of authenticity is vulnerability, and you can't just stuff it down. And sometimes things are scary to say, but as soon as we actually do give ourselves the grace to express what we're feeling non-judgmentally, because we tend to over-explain ourselves when it's something that we're nervous about sharing. But if we get down to the raw, hard, you know, truth of it, it's, you know, where does this come from? Right? It could be from the past, it could be from, you know, desires, it could be from many different things, but the thing is just the thing. And so if we were just to, sometimes we need to journal it out to get to the point, right? To get to the deeper desire, to get to what's missing for us. You know, I might want a big fancy house, but the truth is I'm craving safety and stability, right? And so when we present things in that way, our partners can kind of, you know, wrap their hearts around it, not just their minds. The spinning mind will find excuses and reasons to panic. But I think it's so important and speaks volumes to, you know, how you're capable of having that beautiful relationship and co-parenting. And yeah, just communication and vulnerability are so, so important. And thank you for being that. Yeah.
Thank you. And so, yeah, so there was like So we ended up in separate relationships. Then, so we were both monogamous in our individual relationships, lived together like full time. Um, moved into different rooms about 6 months into that situation, into being like monogamous with our partners, you know, change rooms at that point. And then in December last year, I ended the relationship with the guy that I got into a relationship with, and it was in January this year that my ex-husband then was like, okay, I'm going to live part-time with my partner, because our original idea had been we have the family home, you know, and then we take it in turns to live and move and live with our partners separately. And then obviously with the ending of the relationship that I had, we decided, well, we could still continue that anyway. It just means that I'm here when he is as well. And so with all of that, I, you know, became, you probably already guessed by now anyway, because of the training that I did, but yeah, sex, love, and relationship coach. So yeah, and the really interesting thing is, and I'm in a mastermind at the moment, and it's quite focused on human design, is a lot of the things I teach are the things that I experience, and it's like I have been through so much. like I can teach it all, like non-monogamy, dating, relationships, marriage, divorce, like all of it, you know, like secure relationships that bring up your deepest anxious attachment, if that's you, you know, all of the different things. It feels like, yeah, I have the opportunity to experience, take my learning, and then support other people in their processes too, whether it's sexual or relational.
That's such a beautiful place, because non-judgment, as much as we talk about non-judgment as coaches, and, you know, even in the healthcare system and just all the different spaces that we support others, I think it's really important actually to have had your own experience to really truly be non-judgmental, because it's just a construct of the human mind to create judgment about things. And so I just think it's amazing that people can really share their truth with you and know, oh, you've been there, you know what this is like, right? That's like talking about pregnancy, but like you've never been through pregnancy. I've explained pregnancy. I did my specialty, my chosen specialty was obstetrics and gynecology, and that was before I had my son. And so, you know, I had seen so many pregnant women. I couldn't even count if I told you, but and through, you know, many different countries. And so you hear all these different stories and you think, you know, until you go through it. And then you're like, oh, that's what that person meant. Oh, baby brain? Oh no, baby brain is really real. Now I get it. Like, as soon as you start forgetting things and you've had the best memory, you're like, oh, okay. So for me to expect that my patient is going to remember the 30 things I told them and they're going to actually follow through is totally unrealistic. Like, it is literally batshit crazy. Excuse my language. But we just, when you go through it, you're really able to hold such a compassionate and beautiful and just caring space. So it is a beautiful thing. And life is for experiencing, it's for living. So
absolutely that. And
so juicy.
and going to the living. And that was the thing. So it was, you know, I had called in, I wanted more. And I called in the more, because the thing that I learned in those first 4 months of my training was there wasn't one person that would benefit from doing this work, whether it's with sexually, relationally, whatever it might be, because we have so many conditionings from so many different angles. You know, women have conditionings in one way, men have them in another way, but generally speaking, there's always like a bell curve, of course, in cultural and intersectional and all those things. But generally speaking, you know, we are all receiving input externally, which affects how able we are to show up. And you know, one of the things that I learned is that when you are able to connect to your like sexual self, your sexual center, that's the part of us where we hold the most shame. And shame is something that causes you to retract, to dim down. Once you are able to like own that part of yourself, your sexuality, all of that shame just sort of like dissipates. And when you're able to sit with the feeling of shame and not allow it to rule you, that in itself opens up like this whole like confidence. Just it's like an aliveness. It's just so much more. And women who connect to that part of themselves have a connection to like a power within them that just is like non-fuckwithable. You know, it really is that, because nobody can say or do anything anymore to you, because it's like I've connected to that deepest part of myself. Like nothing more can be taken or added to me.
I love that invitation. That is so juicy. And I would love, actually, because I think we don't know what we don't know. So I feel like a lot of us think, and I'm sure there are so many parts of myself that are still like locked in that little box of not experiencing, because, you know, some of the experiences that you've had, you know, you say them and I'm like, I notice my little judgments coming up because I've never experienced some of these things. And so, yeah, it's so fascinating to me when I hear, you know, when you hear this as somebody who maybe hasn't fully opened up, and I'm like, what could life be like if it was fully, you know? And I've done a ton of work around, you know, all the things to lead to now. And that's exactly why there was something about a recent conversation I had. And I just thought, you know, we really need to start talking more about this. And the group that we have is the Sexy Successful Sisterhood. And the whole point is to be able to actually give yourself that full freedom to own yourself. It's not about sex. It's not about that sexual appeal that we're attracting people and like using sex for manipulation. We're not talking about that. Sexy Successful is all about being embodied in yourself, to feel good inside, to feel juicy, to feel expansive, to have that creativity, you know? And when I started tapping into that, I was just, all of these downloads would come, and you know, you could really take that inspired, surrendered, aligned action. And a lot of people don't really understand the surrendered part, but it's exactly what you just spoke to, is that you're not doing it for the end result, whatever it is that's inspired, that's coming through you. You're not doing it for the external validation. You're not doing it to make, you know, mom and dad or partner or, you know, boss or whoever happy. You're not looking for validation. You're doing it because it's inspired from you. And whatever comes from it, you know, it's going to be good. You know, it's going to be juicy because it's from within. There are no holdbacks. There are no, you know, expectations or traps that we put around the thing that we're creating. It's just there in the world to develop and to kind of open up, and like a flower just blossom. And so, yeah, and all of it can be related back to sexuality and all the other ways we experience life. So I'm just so grateful for everything we're about to learn from you, for all the areas we're going to deepen in. And I also, when you said shame, I just also want to reflect that shame is the lowest vibrational frequency that we can actually embody. If we're holding shame, we are vibrating at such a low energy. And when we do, I talk about the matrix because it's a very like, you know, trigger word for a lot of people these days. And they think like the matrix, like the movie, and it's this sci-fi thing. But the truth is the matrix is just energy. And when we're talking about existing in a different realm, it's literally the energy with which you move in the world. When you're at that low vibrational frequency and energy, you also attract and you see in the world things that are at that lower vibrational energy. So that is like all of the things that we're starting to see now. The world is becoming so receptive and karma so fast right now because we're going through this purging process. So without getting into the weeds of it, we're being asked to actually recognize when we're in shame and or all the lower vibrational frequencies without judging them as negative or positive emotions. They're frequencies. When we transform them and when we actually are able to hold space for that wave, because it feels like a wave when it comes over. If we're able to just settle into our bodies and let the wave pass and allow ourselves to feel it all and release it. Feelings take 90 seconds to feel. When we're able to just release it and let it come back to that stillness, and start to have some compassion and that unconditional love maybe we didn't receive as children, and give ourselves that grace without judgment, and things start to really settle and our frequency starts to elevate, and we stop having all of our friends coming to us with their dramas and the news scaring us and being so tight and contracted, and we start to expand. And when we start to be able to receive, and then we start to be able to create, and we start to be able to feel juicy in our bodies and in our relationships and all the things. And so I just wanted to put out there that if you are feeling shame, if you're feeling guilt, if you're feeling contracted about anything that's going on in your life, this is a really hopeful conversation. And I'm excited to keep it going next week, because we're going to learn more about some of the tools. And you're so generously offering a workshop in our Sexy Successful Sisterhood. So that is going to be so, so juicy. It's the second week of December. So put it in your calendars. We're going to put more information out there for you. And if you're not part of the Sexy Successful Sisterhood, you can join online if you're a woman. That's our only criteria. And you're bringing your love and your compassion and your vulnerability into the space, because the whole point is to connect like this, heart-centered, with other women, and really be able to open up into our own and each other's celebration of our juiciness and our expansion and just these amazing conversations. So Carla, thank you. I know we don't have a ton of time, but I wonder if you'd like to leave our audience with something, juicy to enjoy the week with.
Yeah, so my invitation then would be like, how can you bring a little bit more pleasure into your life? So noticing like where every day you can bring a little bit more pleasure, because one of the things that I noticed when I was working through my anxiety by myself was raising, you just talked about it then, but it's like teaching the nervous system, instead of like being on hypervigilant alert, that actually things can feel good. And so where can you bring more pleasure? And it doesn't need to be like pleasure as in self-pleasure. It can be like, how can I sit for a moment and really enjoy the coffee that I'm drinking? How can I sit and look outside and just look with beauty and awe at the way the leaves move in the wind? Or, how can I maybe treat myself to some flowers, or, have a look at your underwear drawer and get rid of some stuff. That was one thing that I did. That brought me so much joy. So like, and so they could be small or big things, like where can I bring more pleasure into my day? So yeah, that's what I'm going to leave you with.
I love that. That feels so juicy, because there's so many different ways that we can bring pleasure. I think I right away, my visual was being on the beach and actually digging my feet into the sand and digging my hands into the sand and just feeling that sand and just settling in and just taking a few deep breaths. And it's like, that is so simple. It's so simple. It could just be putting your hands under hot and cold water and feeling the sensation and really settling into that, feeling the soap bubbles. When you put lotion on, I did a workshop at Miraval with some ladies, and I asked, what helps you get into that sexy, successful feeling and that flow and that divine feminine? And one of the physicians said, I love taking time to just put lotion and really love myself when I'm doing it. Because how often do we just like rush through all the things? We just shower quickly, we lotion quickly, we put our makeup on quickly. We're in such a rush that we don't take the time to really feel. And it's so sensual and it's so beautiful and it can be so juicy. So thank you for this invitation. I'm excited to give myself a little bit more of a chance to experience pleasure. And that's such a beautiful invitation. And this is for men and women. This invitation is not just for women. It is for everybody out there, non-binary, however you identify. It's really, as a human being, to be more human, to be more in our bodies. So embodied is the word we use often. And I know it's such a trigger word nowadays, like it's one of those just popular words, but this is what it really means to be in our bodies. And it's such a beautiful thing. So Carla, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Thank you for sharing your gifts with the world. Thank you for opening up to yourself and honoring your truth, because that's something that we can all do, holding grace for each other, to ask more curious questions, to really get to know each other, to really hold that presence and patience and compassion and grace. You've held such beautiful grace for me this morning. And so I'm just, yes, so grateful. I'm so excited to connect further. Thank you. I love you. I'll see you again so soon.
Thank you.
Have a beautiful day.